Hi, everybody. I'm Jordan Ostroff of LegalEase Marketing, and this is Exhibit A Attorneys, where we interview attorneys and other experts around the country to talk about what it really takes to be the Exhibit A of a successful attorney. Joining me today is Ryan Locke of the Locke Law Firm. Ryan grew up in Maryland, went to college at University of Richmond in Virginia. Did I get your acronyms correct?
No, that's right. Go Spiders.
All right. Then law school at Georgia with my now wife, public defender in Atlanta, hung a shingle about 7 years ago, and has been living the dream ever since. Currently, he represents people injured by the carelessness of drivers and property owners, as well as people unfairly convicted of crimes. He tells you that his biggest difference is that he spends the amount of time he spends with his clients, much more than other firms, but that also he is smarter, writes better, and is much more handsome than many of his competitors. So a couple extra things that Ryan brings to the table. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome. And I mean, as you can see, I am Exhibit A of a successful attorney coming to you from my successful home office right here in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm very happy to join you.
It's actually a virtual background, so people don't get jealous of you. You've overlaid Norman Rockwell's modern day Americana there.
It's like a man of the people type thing. You know, sometimes you read those articles where it's like, drive a crappy car to the courthouse, don't wear a Rolex to like connect with the jury. Yeah, this is how I connect with the jury in the modern era.
There we go. So today we're going to talk about all things digital, including long form content as well as hiring. But before that, if you want to watch our last episode that aired on Monday with Alexis Austin, who talked to us about the importance of a good intake process, something near and dear to my heart. And now we're going to talk about digital marketing and some other digital efforts, another thing near and dear to my heart. So thank you so much for joining us today, Ryan.
I'm excited to be here.
For people looking to connect with you more and not get you confused with the Olympic swimmer, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
You can go to thelockefirm.com, TheLockefirm.com. And that's my website. It has a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about today. You can shoot me an email, ryan@thelockefirm.com. And I'm most active, I think, on Twitter, where it's at Ryan Locke, Locke.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit of kind of the origin story, not so much of you, but of your law firm. You know, I know you talked about a little bit, taking a couple of years to realize it was a business and then getting to meet some really great people and Max Law, some other groups. So, you know, walk us through that process a little bit more.
Well, so I was a public defender here in Atlanta. And I had been a public defender for a few years, and I was kind of wanting more, right? A little bit more autonomy, a little bit more control over my own schedule, and a little bit more responsibility for the entire life cycle of a client. And so I actually spent I was hired by an insurance defense firm, and I lasted maybe 8 months and realized like, oh, that was not for me. And so I'd been thinking about hanging a shingle, and then I kind of realized like, oh, well, you know, I really do need to do it because the firm was not a good fit. So I hung a shingle. I did trial level criminal defense for a couple years. We have tons of counties here in Georgia, and so you know, I was driving around to a bunch of different counties and hanging out in the courthouses and you know, doing all the fun trial stuff. I started having kids and wanted a better schedule than like driving around during the day and then doing all my work at night. And so I started transitioning into personal injury, and that was maybe 5 years ago. Now I'm maybe 2/3 personal injury and 1/3 criminal appeals. I'd always been doing appeals at the public defender, and then when it was out, and it was something that I really enjoyed. And so I thought, you know, I can't let it go because it's just really a great part. Like I just really enjoy the work, and I feel like a real lawyer when I'm doing it. You know, it's like very core lawyer skills. And so, and also I do some contract public defender work on my appeal side. so I can still kind of give back to the public defender world.
Well, and I also think it's wonderful because ultimately, a lot of those cases on appeal are coming from people you may have worked with as a public defender that you know. And then obviously, I would assume you get a good number of referrals from those people as well for the personal injury stuff.
And at least in Atlanta, there are a lot of criminal defense lawyers, but there are not tons of lawyers who specialize in criminal appeals, and that's kind of their main focus. And of the people who do it, there's like a band of people who charge way more than me, and then there's a band of people who charge about what I charge. And so it's nice because it's easier to rank organically because not a lot of people are putting out a lot of criminal appeals content. It's easy to distinguish yourself for referrals because not many people are saying, hey, I do criminal appeals and that's it. I don't do any criminal trial work. And so I think it's a little bit easier to market yourself in that niche.
Well, I think it's interesting because you're talking about the ease of marketing, but also about deciding the kind of the lifestyle you wanted to have. And I always find the happiest attorneys are the ones that merge those two things.
Oh yeah, and I think that it's funny that you mentioned the first couple of years, I didn't really think of a law firm as a business, and certainly going to UGA, the kind of thinking back then was you either go to a big firm or you go work for the government, and there was no training about like what if you want to go work for yourself. And so I was just stumbling through everything the first couple of years, and only maybe in the last 5 or 6 have I really started to nail kind of business fundamentals. And I think that also helps. So like it helps when you're running a good business. It helps when you pick something that really meshes with your lifestyle, and it helps when you pick something that you enjoy. And so if you can if you can get all those 3 kind of cylinders pumping, then I think you have something good.
And it's interesting. So, you talked about coming up, understanding that it was a business and the business fundamentals. At what point did you start incorporating more of that digital component to the practice? Because obviously it seems like, you're really doing a great job there.
Well, I'd always been tech oriented, right? And so I'd always kept all my files on the cloud, and I'd always been paperless and that kind of thing. But really, it was being exposed to other lawyers, particularly through online groups, to really take my firm to the next level, especially with things like like I'd never heard of a like a marketing funnel, right? And I think your guest Sam next week I think is going to talk about that. But like seeing experts do that, and then say, oh, I should create a marketing funnel. Like, oh, I should create a drip campaign, right? When someone wants to hire me, and then we can send emails to them if they don't, and they'll remember who I am. Even just stuff as simple as that. It's like, I think if you looked under the hood, 90% of what I'm doing is like what any, like first year business student would consider the bare minimum in running a modern business. But in law, it seems like it's not very widely adopted to do these things. And so if you're doing the bare minimum, that's still a competitive advantage for you. And so, just joining, we have some Georgia specific online lawyer groups. One that I found really valuable is Maximum Lawyer. They're a Facebook group and a podcast. And just kind of seeing what everyone else is doing and then adapting it to my own firm has been very helpful.
Breezy, if you get a chance, if we can drop the link to the Maximum Lawyer Facebook page in here, that'd be great, because I know that's a wealth of knowledge and a great resource for so many attorneys. So I know, I don't know if you jumped in. I'm getting some audio feedback. All right, so we're talking about now taking this to, I love what you talked about with the marketing funnels, drip campaigns. I agree with you. I mean, there's so many lawyers that are completely unknowledgeable about this, which is not a judgment call. I mean, we don't learn it in law school. If we start at the government, we don't learn it. If we start at a big firm, we don't learn it. Like, it's really the, the you and the me's running those the small to medium businesses where you have to know enough to be able to continue to grow the business in the manner that makes the most sense. And so one of the things you talked about that I want to hear more on is marketing using long form content. So right off the bat, what are we talking about with long form content?
So, we're talking about essentially like subject matter guides, and long form content. I'm sure there's some definition about like how many words it should be and that kind of thing. But what I'm talking about is not like a blog post that you pound out that's like 4 or 5 paragraphs. It's where there is some area or issue that that you want to address, and that you create the definitive guide for it. And so one way that I used this was, there's this thing called the High-Tech Act that you can use to request medical records for cheap. And when I created this guide to use the High-Tech Act, there were some other websites that talked about it, but none of them were super comprehensive. And importantly, none of them were geared towards a lawyer who was looking at how to do it in their own firm and how to create a system around it. And so I created this long web page that described, what the High-Tech Act is, how to use it. I posted like docx letters that you could download that I send, the text expander snippets that we used internally, and then a long list of that we had developed internally of common pushback from medical providers and how to respond.
Is that
And
still available?
it's available right now on my website,
Okay.
thelaw.com/hightech, HITECH. And it's funny because I initially posted it, and one of my attorney friends called me up and was like, Ryan, why did you post all that? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he was like, you could put that into a PDF, charge people $20 to see it, and make money off it. And my view was, well, what's more valuable to me than, I don't know, an initial couple $1,000 is providing tons of value to other lawyers and then asking them to refer me stuff, and asking and kind of becoming known for this really niche thing. And what happened was, tons of lawyers started using it. The lawyers started referring me cases because of it. I've been local counsel in a couple cases because someone saw the guide and needed a Georgia local counsel. And I'm in touch with just tons of lawyers all the time about personal injury lawyers about this kind of stuff nationwide. And so it's helped in that way. It's helped both for page views, for whatever that's worth, but also as kind of a networking tool, that where it makes it easy to network with people who care about the same stuff that I care about.
Hey, Breezy, I put in the chat the link to Max Law, and then if we can do the lockfirm.com/hightech, HITECH, as well in the comments, please. Yeah, and it's interesting because we're in that age where you can monetize anything. Like literally, there are people making millions of dollars opening up toys on YouTube. And so it's always interesting to kind of balance that, monetization, side hustle with hobbies and interests. And especially as a lawyer, I mean, no offense to you, but at $20 a pop, how many of these are you going to sell versus like that one PI case, might be a 5-figure or 6-figure settlement to you. I mean, that's going to be worth a lot more than, 200 people paying you to read this guide.
Well, absolutely right. And I mean, I'm early in my career relatively, right? And so I'm playing the long game. Like, I would rather provide so much value to another lawyer that they don't forget my name, and like if they refer one case to me over the next 30 years that I practice, that's way more, that'll move the needle more than the couple $1,000 that I would get now. And that just wouldn't really make any difference for me. The other way that I've used long form content, so I have this High-Tech guide that is targeted towards attorneys. I also created a guide for changing your name and gender marker in your birth certificate and other government documents in Georgia. And I actually made this directly as a response to President Trump getting elected, because a lot of trans folk were worried that, and I think rightly so, that they would be discriminated against more in the Trump era, that they would have reduced access to changing their government documents to reflect their own name and gender expression. And the funny thing is, actually doing this is not difficult. It's just difficult if you've never walked into a courthouse before, right? It's like, and so for us lawyers, it's like, oh yeah, it's a 5-item list that you need to do. You show up for a hearing, you pass paper around, you file, you advertise in the legal organ, and boom, there you go, right? It's another Tuesday. But for someone who's never encountered the court system before, it's very complicated and very scary. And it was something that was relatively new. And so I have a complete guide for how to do that, including sample pleadings and kind of, fill out yourself pleadings, and all this stuff. And I would say and if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I talk to them for free. And if they try to hire me, I tell them no, right? And I say, you can hire me, but only if money's more valuable than time for you. Otherwise, we'll talk for 15 or 20 minutes and I'll walk you through it. And now, obviously, this is not to generate business. I mean, in some way it is, because I'm talking to people that I probably would never otherwise talk to, right? And a lot of people, I'm the only lawyer that they know from then on out. But one way that I've been able to utilize this piece of content, but it's the most comprehensive guide for anyone doing this in Georgia, and I'm one of maybe 3 lawyers who actually do this. Whenever I give people free help, I say, hey, can you do me a favor? If this helped you, can you leave me a 5-star review on Google and just describe how this helped you? And and I don't have tons. I mean, I don't have tons of reviews. I think I have like low 30s. But I consistently get reviews from giving people some free help. And to me, I'll gladly exchange 15 minutes on the phone for a nice 5-star Google review. Certainly at this point in my career.
Well, and especially, and I love how you phrase that, because like you're helping somebody that may end up getting an accident, that may end up needing you, but ultimately they're walking through a very personal moment in life that they may not have help otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like it's funny, it's also a good thing to do, right? So it's like, I'm also doing it because it's a good thing to do. But if I can do it because it's the right thing to do, and I can also get some value for me in a not super scummy way, then then I can both justify it as like it's a good moral thing to do, and it's a good business thing to do.
So, from the standpoint of an attorney, watching or listening to this discussion, who's looking for the right piece of that long form content for them, obviously don't steal the high tech guide, and but come up with something that fits you. Like, what are the right questions to ask? How do you get somebody to come up with the right topic?
So I think, for blog posts and stuff, I think there's a lot, like, if I want some pretty thin content, there's a lot of ways to figure that out, like AVO questions, keyword researchers, that kind of thing. I think for this kind of deep, long form content, you need to think about what are big pressing problems that are big enough that people are really going to find value in it, but not so big that they've already been solved by excellent content, right? So like, I would not, if I were going to write another piece of content, let's say in the, in the PI space, I wouldn't try to write like a, a guide to filing a personal injury lawsuit or something like that, because there's a lot of good content out there. Or like, I wouldn't try to write a treatise, because there are a lot of great treatises out there. What I might do is think about, okay, a lot of cases that personal injury attorneys pass on are disputed liability soft tissue injury cases, right?
Yep.
And so maybe I would say, I'm going to write the best comprehensive guide aimed at a pro se litigant on how to prosecute your own disputed liability soft tissue case. And I'm going to include a sample pleading that you can download and fill out. I'm going to include sample request letters to get the evidence you need. I'm going to, include a list of every traffic court in Georgia, so you can find whatever traffic court the other party was cited in, and get it or whatever. I'm going to include common investigative things that we do ourselves to figure out liability. A sample open records request for 911 calls, a list of background check services that you can use. And so I'm going to make this, from soup to nuts for this pro se person, and then just put it out. And the goal is, one, you can, if you're a personal injury lawyer, for every case that you decline because it's a disputed liability soft issue, you can say, hey, look, man, we can't represent you for this guide on how you can do it yourself. And so here it is. And for other lawyers, you can say, hey, guys, I know it sucks, declining these people. And there's always the danger that they leave you a bad review or shit talk you because you didn't take their case. So you can add people some value by sending them to my guide. And what I would probably also do is retarget them. So, pixel them and all that. Collect their information. Maybe I wouldn't use it as a gateway, but I would maybe say, if you want more information, that kind of thing. And I would also somehow get them a download link for my for a V card that just has lawyer, car accident lawyer Ryan Locke, and tell them download it to your phone. And in that way, I'm growing a list of people who have been in a wreck but aren't a good client for me now, but maybe. I'm putting my information in their phone, and then I can retarget them. And then you can just kind of grow a list of that you can then blast with, whatever marketing material you have. But people you can start reminding that you exist, and then, if let's say that you take some time to make that, and you get a handful of cases off it over the next decade, like the ROI on that's going to be insane.
So I just want to back up here for a second. So in essence, I mean, it sounds like we're sort of balancing what you do with where the need is that you might not be able to help with, like, how does it make you feel to help people through this issue? Like, are those kind of the three things that we're juggling when coming up with this content?
Yeah. I mean, and I think you can target people, like you can target, non-lawyers in this way, like what I just described, right? You can also target lawyers and non-lawyers, but it's related to your practice area, right?
Right.
So like they're going to want to know this stuff, and you're going to encounter these potential clients you're going to have to decline and can refer them. You could also create content, I think, directed at lawyers for to get referrals. And then I would think about, if I want to get referrals from PI lawyers, PI cases, I'm not going to target PI lawyers, because if it's a good enough case, they're going to keep it. And so I would want to target some other lawyer, but perhaps have some overlap that I can provide, right? So maybe I want to target immigration lawyers or criminal defense lawyers. I mean, the HITECH Act is a good example where I could write a similar thing for public defenders, right? Where I could say, hey, public defenders, do you need to get your clients' medical records in their criminal defense case? Like, here, let me show you how to do that, and it'll cost you $10. And so you don't have to worry about, your boss coming down on you because you sent out a request and then they got a bill for, $3,000 or something. And so I'm targeting.
Definitely happened to many people before.
One of the reasons I started the page was I got slapped with a $5,000 bill, and for records that they never even delivered. But that's a whole different story. But so you can provide value to these cases. If I were an immigration lawyer and I did removal defense, I would think about doing some type of immigration consequences guide for every commonly charged crime in my state, and I would provide that for free to every public defender in the state. And then and like that's the kind of content. I mean, there are tons of Padilla guides out there, right? but there aren't. I don't know if there's any guide where I could look up a Georgia, look up a Georgia crime, and it would tell me exactly what the Padilla analysis is. Maybe even the sample language that I would have to put into a letter to my own client advising them about this stuff. And so that adds massive value. And then you become the go-to person for those public defenders for that immigration stuff. The last thing, so we have the in your practice area, non-lawyers, potential clients, a kind of adjacent or complementary practice areas, or people who also serve your potential clients in these other areas. And then I can think about the last thing is, and this is like my birth certificate, changing your name and gender in your birth certificate guide. Things that people want, but no attorney is providing because there's no money in it, or it's a really cutting edge kind of thing. And so, in that way, for those, I think the main value you can get from them are getting more people to know who you are, particularly if you're, like a PI lawyer, you're consumer facing, but also the breadth of your list kind of, the more people on your list, the more money you're going to make, because the more potential cases are going to come in. Or like what I'm doing with like reviews or that kind of thing, right? I think you could also probably use it for like to increase your own, if you're looking for like speaking engagements,
Right.
or to like kind of increase your own profile, and you have some connection for why you want to do it. Like let's say that if I were really into like model rocketry, let's say, then maybe I'd write a guide about like model rocketry law and common issues. Like what happens when you shoot a model rocket off and it lands on someone's roof? Who's responsible? Where are you allowed to shoot them off? Like if you have drones and you're into pictures, like where can you fly them? What, that kind of thing. And then you start getting exposure in those areas. I think the interest has to be authentic.
Right.
Like you can't just, like I couldn't, like I wish I could write a long form article about like motorcycles or something, but that's just not me. But anyway, you can kind of be the lawyer in these other groups through the incredible content that you're making for them and giving for free, and not trying to get anything back other than just kind of being known.
Makes total sense. And so it's amazing to me how as much information as we have access to, there are still millions of really great ideas like this that are never done or were just done very recently. And it's just incredible to see people try and continue to reinvent the same wheel over and over again when there's a million other wheels that might apply to their firm as well, or their area of practice.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think like one way that, and like anyone can really find good ideas, is to just make it hyper specific and hyper local. And there's so many ways to, if you think, what could I do that would help the lawyers in this niche practice area in my state and would also benefit me? You can probably come up with a list of, at least 5 things. And the other nice thing about this long form content is it ranks well on Google. Other people, if it's the best, if it truly does give incredible value, other lawyers will love it. Other lawyers will recommend it to everyone. Like it'll have legs, and it lasts forever.
Right.
Like you can once you put up this incredible long form content and you devote, maybe like an hour or 2 a month to update it or improve it or whatever over time. I think my high tech one's been up for a number of years, and it continually provides, like I get emails about it every week. And I do a very minimal job. I only update it when big things happen. And so, I think that that has a lot stronger legs over time than the equivalent amount of time just punching out, blog posts or something like that.
Makes total sense. All right, so I want to change gears a little bit. We also talked about You mentioned that you had just hired somebody using a completely virtual process. So we're going to go into
Mhm.
digital hiring, which is especially relevant, even though we are hopefully, knock on wood, towards the end of COVID, but still forcibly extra digital. Kind of walk us through, a little bit of what happened there.
So I had to, I was hiring another paralegal, and obviously this is a hire that like you want to spend a lot of time on and you want to get right, like a real critical hire. And I decided this was over the holidays during COVID, and I decided this position can be remote, and so I'd kind of like them to be in my time zone or an adjacent time zone, but otherwise, I'm in the Eastern time. Like you could be in Tennessee, you can be in Maine, whatever. But I hate hiring. I hate spending the time doing it. I hate um, I hate reading people's resumes and cover letters. I hate if you applied for this job, let me apologize to you, but I hated reading all of your stuff. Like I just don't like it, and I'm not particularly good at it either. Right. Anyway, so here's what I did. One, I want to plug one service. It's called Wise Hire, WIZEHIRE. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't get paid anything for them, but they're the best. They're the best mass hiring service that I've used. I think it's maybe like a little bit north of $100 a month, and you can
Oh, we may have.
pause.
Oh,
You can
wait.
post.
You're coming in and out.
Oh, the I'm talking about Wise Hire. The two nice things is you can blast your job ad everywhere, and it makes every applicant take a DISC profile assessment.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and it'll compare their DISC results to the ideal DISC profile for the job you're hiring for. And so this is cool. Both one, it's an additional barrier to entry. And so I don't want to hire someone who doesn't take the time to do that. Two, I can make sure that generally they'll be a good fit for the job, right? And three, it also lets me know that my job ad is targeting the right people. Because if I have a job ad for a paralegal and I'm getting like widely different DISC results, then I know I'm not hitting the type of people I want to hit. But if a lot of the results are similar, then I know, okay, great. This is hiring the type of person who I want. Anyway, that's the plug for WiseHire. But here behind the scenes is what I did. Job ad is really long so that they have to read it. And I put information in there that if they mention it, then they immediately get bonus points, like what our mission is, what our values are, that kind of thing. There's a link in there. It says apply by this link. And the link goes to a Google form where they have to input their name and email. Once they do that, it sends them an email and it says, hey, thank you so much for applying. Go to this second link to apply. By the way, this is going to take you about 20 minutes. Shoots them over to another Google form that asks them some basic questions that were basic. I'm mostly using to see, like, do you have any experience in this area? And right. Are you going to write more than one sentence? Like some people, if I ask, hey, describe your experience in a law office, and someone writes yes, like you're not getting hired. But if you write 5 or 10 sentences describing your experience, then like, great, you're going on. Here's the other critical thing that I did. I included questions that mirror actual tasks that I would give them or actual ways that we would communicate. And so here's a real one that I used, because this kind of stuff happens all the time in a PI office. It said, imagine you get this email from me. Hey, we just got the client's medical records from Dr. Smith, and he referred the client to specialist Dr. Brown. Please get all these records. Which records should you request? Records from Dr. Smith, records from Dr. Brown, records from both Dr. Smith and Dr. Brown, or need more information, right? And obviously the answer is we have the records from Mr. Smith, from Dr. Smith, you need to request the records from Dr. Brown. 1/3 of all my applicants got that question wrong. And they had unlimited time to figure that out. And I actually would have given you extra points if you emailed me and said, hey, your question's a little bit unclear, but here's what I think you're asking. I don't want it to count against me in the process, which no one did, by the way. No one did that. And so then I had a couple more questions, some grammar questions and that kind of thing. What this all did was, so I click the button, turn this all on, don't check it for a week. Jump in, everything's in a Google Sheet. It's extremely easy to compare everyone's responses. And I can look and just exclude everyone who answered any of these questions incorrectly. And then I'm left with a pretty high quality pool of people where it's much easier to determine, all right, who should I interview and who not. The people who I interviewed, I scheduled using a calendaring program. We met on Google Meet. I recorded every interview. And then I shared that interview with my team. And I said, hey, guys, I'm thinking these 3 people are the finalists. Tell me who you think I should watch a little bit of the interviews and tell me who you think I should hire. And everyone picked the person we ended up hiring. And it saved so much time because I wanted my team's input because we're pretty small. And this paralegal role is a critical person who would be interacting with everyone. So I wanted everyone's buy-in. I also wanted to make sure that I was making the right hire. But I didn't want to waste time with everyone sit in on this call and watch me ask this person questions and they answer and that kind of thing.
Makes total sense.
And so it's the first hiring process that I've ever enjoyed. The only way I think I would improve it is in moving forward, I would take myself out of the interview and I would have someone else conduct these interviews and record them. I would review them and then I would step in for a final vibe check interview. But otherwise, I'm very happy with it because a lot of people self-eliminated. Their emails bounced back. They gave shitty answers. They gave incorrect answers. And then of the people who are left, we had a nice high quality pool. And we're able to interview and hire. And we did this over in the weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So in a time when no one really wants to be doing anything.
Right.
We got over 200 applicants for this job and made a really great hire.
That's fantastic. All right. So as we start getting towards the end, any other tips that you want to add on the digital hiring process?
I do the same thing for, I have some virtual assistants who do things like some social media stuff and some med records review and retrieval and that kind of thing. And my number one, and so their hiring is obviously less involved because those kind of positions are just kind of more fungible. But we still make some good hires by making them do something that they're going to have to do in the actual job and then judging that, and so for the, I have a social media virtual assistant who takes the transcripts from the videos that I post on YouTube, turns them into blog posts and posts them on my website. And so what I did, the entire hiring process, it was the same exact thing. I didn't use WiseHire. I posted on a virtual assistant job board, but it was essentially give me your name and email. I want to make sure that the email doesn't bounce when it's sent back to you. That maybe 10% of emails bounce.
Wow.
It says download this text file, which is a transcript of a 4-minute video I posted on YouTube. Write a blog post, go to this Google form and paste it into the Google form along with your name and email. And then I'll get back to you. And that's it. That's the entire job application, right? Some people posted in not great blog posts, right? Oh, and I have a checklist on how to do it. And I included that portion of the checklist. And so I said, just follow this checklist. Maybe a third of people didn't follow the checklist or did something that I didn't want at all. One person created a PowerPoint presentation based on, right. I'm like, that's less than useless for me. So I didn't hire that person. maybe most of the rest did an adequate job. And then the person I ended up hiring did this. They posted in the blog, and they had a little preview before it, a little like intro. And they said, hey, I assume that this is for an audience in the United States. And I think I understand what you were talking about. So I did some keyword research, and I included some additional keywords in the text, and they're all in bold, so you can see where I put them in.
All right.
I don't even have to look at anything else. You're hired.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so this process really makes the best fit for exactly what you need them to do. It makes those candidates rise to the top.
Makes perfect sense. All right. So for everybody interested in continuing to follow our show, our next episode will be on Monday, February 8th. We have Sam, who's going to talk to us. Sam is part of the 2 Comma Club. That means that through ClickFunnels, he has made over $1 million worth of business, hence the 2 Commas, which I think is the coolest name. And there actually is an award for any of you that have seen the Facebook ads that at least I get currently from him. He's going to talk to us about marketing funnels, digital Facebook ads, etc., along those lines. Then next week on Tuesday the 9th, I'll be speaking at the Law Firm Growth Summit being put on by Profit with Law. We'll be talking about the missing pieces of your marketing puzzle. That conference goes until Thursday. Thursday, we'll be doing a breakout session as part of the conference on how to double your close rate automatically. We'll talk about that. If anybody's interested, that's lawfirmgrowthsummit.com/LegalEase. And with that, let me come back to, so if somebody has been listening to this for the last about 45 minutes and they take absolutely nothing else away, there is nothing that they remember other than what you're about to say here, what is the biggest piece of advice that you would like to give to attorneys to help them become the exhibit A of a successful attorney?
Yeah, I mean, if you take nothing else away, remember that I'm Ryan Locke, the attorney, and not Ryan Locke, the Olympic swimmer. That's the only thing that I want you to take away. I think here's a common problem that I have, and I continue to try to work on it, so I imagine that a lot of other people do too, is when you start thinking about your firm as business and all the things you can do, suddenly there's a list like of 500 things long, right? And you're like, wow, I'm deficient in literally every area of my professional life. Like, I need to fix all of this right away. And you'll do if you try to fix everything right away, you'll do a poor job, you won't see any results, and you'll quit. And so what's really helped me is picking one thing every quarter, and I say, this is the thing that by the end of this quarter, it's going to be perfect and self-sustaining, and then I can move on to the next thing. And maybe that's maybe that's your hiring process. And you say, all right, I'm going to put this hiring process together that I heard Ryan talk about. I'm going to make a hire. And that's a Q1 goal. Maybe it's I'm going to write a long form content. Maybe it's, start a podcast, drip funnel, whatever, pick one thing. That's your thing. Focus on it relentlessly. And you will move the needle more that way than if you try to handle a bunch of things all at once. And I know this from hard-won experience.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. The Mike Whalen called it "do less but better," and that's that's ultimately the entire part of this show is we're trying to give people a bunch of different options to help them figure out what are the 2 or 3 things that they want to throw themselves into when it comes to marketing. So rather than being the barracuda always chasing that new shiny object and not actually accomplishing anything.
Yeah,
fantastic, man. Before I let you go,
thanks for having me on, Jordan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Before I let you go, though, you just started a new case law podcast.
That's right. So if you are in Georgia and you practice personal injury or criminal defense, I guess also criminal prosecution. I mean, if you're into that sort of thing.
Knowing the law, usually important for prosecutors.
If you would like to know the law, I have a weekly show where I talk about every single criminal defense and personal injury appellate case that was decided the week before. And we talk about the facts of the case, the holding of the case, and practice tips about how to apply these types of things to your practice. And it's Georgia Case Law Podcast, available wherever podcasts are sold, and it's dropped every week.
It's free though, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That was the Anchor FM, Georgia Case Law Podcast. I'm sure iTunes, Stitcher, all the big ones.
It's on yes. It's on all the ones that Anchor will let me push it to, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Perfect. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
I had fun. Thanks so much, Jordan.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Exhibit A Attorneys. If you're interested in becoming the Exhibit A of successful attorney, please check us out at LegalEaseMarketing.com, EASE.